I used to sort of consider myself a feminist, an environmentalist, and I still have some of that in me, but I've done so many offensive comedies, I'm now worn down to a little nub of an activist. You can't really call yourself an environmentalist if you're still consuming animals. You just can't. I became an environmentalist at 16 when I threw a fundraiser for Rainforest Action Network. At 27 I helped save the last unprotected ancient redwoods in California. In my 30s I advocated renewables and successfully helped persuade the Obama administration to invest $90 billion into them. I am an environmentalist, but I'm not a wacko environmentalist. I believe that mankind and nature can live side by side for the mutual benefit of both. Perhaps the time has come to cease calling it the environmentalist view, as though it were a lobbying effort outside the mainstream of human activity, and to start calling it the real-world view. I have never considered myself anything other than an environmentalist. I have spent the better part of my life either in the wilderness, or trying desperately to get there. I have my own career. I'm an environmentalist. We did that with people like Chris Rock, Woody Harrelson, and the environmentalist Julia Butterfly Hill. We must learn to set our emotions aside and embrace what science tells us. GMOs and nuclear power are two of the most effective and most important green technologies we have. If, after looking at the data, you aren't in favor of using them responsibly, you aren't an environmentalist. Let me say right off the bat that I'm not what you would call a tree hugger or a bushes and bunnies environmentalist out to save the planet or the whales, although I do not denigrate that perspective either, and I really like whales. There is a huge market for products and services aimed at what I like to call the pocketbook environmentalist. A shopper who's savvy enough to know things don't necessarily have to cost more just because they're good for the environment. If I'm to be an ist, then, like Bobby Kennedy, I'm probably more of a free market capitalist than an environmentalist. Rather than wanting to tell people to be less bad, I'm saying let's make it fair across the board and stop subsidizing the big heavy polluting fat cats, let's make it a level playing field. An environmentalist can oppose factory farming because it's reckless stewardship. A conservative can oppose factory farming because it is destructive to small farmers and to the decent ethic of husbandry those farmers live by. A religious person can oppose factory farming because it is degrading to both man and animal, an offense to God. I was one of those kids who wanted to do everything. I wanted to be a marine biologist, an actress, a writer, an environmentalist, an activist. I have a major respect for nature. I'm an environmentalist. So that was Reagan's political problem. As a rancher in California, he was an environmentalist himself. But the President of the United States doesn't control everything that happens in Washington. What turned me into an environmentalist, on my 11th birthday, was seeing the first strip mine. Not only do I not drive, I don't have my driver's license. There's a story there. But the upshot is that I spent my high school years an ardent environmentalist and workout junkie who wanted to save the environment, burn calories, and have my boyfriends drive me around. I maintain that if there is such a thing as a true and honest environmentalist, it's people like Slim and hopefully me, who have been caretakers of the land all our lives, along with the generations before us. The skeptical environmentalist was much more the idea of the scientific argument of realizing that we need to be skeptical about a lot of these stories that we hear and to put them in context. I'm a food environmentalist. I'm about the food and the ambience. Being an environmentalist isn't all about doom and gloom. I've always liked speed. I own a car that I shouldn't be talking about because I'm an environmentalist, but the 1955 Porsche Spyder 550 RS is the finest sports car ever made. I'm a radical environmentalist. I think the sooner we asphyxiate in our own filth, the better. The world will do better without us. Maybe some fuzzy animals will go with us, but there'll be plenty of other animals, and they'll be back. My daughter is one of my greatest inspirations. She's an environmentalist, she plays piano, she's raising money for the earthquake victims in Nepal. Every day she surprises me and teaches me something. Environmentalism isn't a discipline or specialty, it's a way of seeing our place in the world, and we need everybody to see the world that way. Don't think, in order to make a difference I have to become an environmentalist. Our customer base isn't just people saying, I'm an environmentalist, I'm in my Birkenstocks, I went to Woodstock. Solar is a bipartisan technology. Republicans like solar, conservatives like solar. Over 30% of our customers are veterans. There's something very American about being able to produce power on your own rooftop. I'm not an environmentalist, or a doctor, or a nutritionist. I was and am an ardent environmentalist, and I am terrified of the instability that climate change will bring. I have great respect for people who live out their beliefs. For example, Ed Begley Jr. is an environmentalist, but he really lives his lives, and is he very prudent in the way he lives? He's cautious. He's not like an Al Gore that flies around in a private jet and burns 20,000 gallons a day on his jet. The result was, when Congress convened in January 1971, everyone was now an environmentalist. They had seen a new force, college students, who favored the environment. Likewise, with solar, especially here in California, we're discovering that the 80 solar farm schemes that are going forward want to basically bulldoze 1,000 square mi of Southern California desert. Well, as an environmentalist, we would rather that didn't happen. I have a daughter who is the strongest environmentalist I've ever met in my life, and God forbid I put a foot wrong. Yes, you could call me a tree hugger, an environmentalist, an eco-warrior even, except I don't spend my life in a caftan, smoking joss sticks and walking a skinny dog on a piece of string. I think everyone born in Oregon is an environmentalist by birth. As for environmentalism, I'm only an environmentalist by accident. I live in New York, so I bike, and the closest grocery store to me sells organic produce. I also shop with a book bag because I ride a bike, and it's hard to carry the paper or plastic bags. I am called an environmentalist a lot, but I don't necessarily identify with that word specifically, because of the compartmentalization of the so-called environmental movement. One of the most unfortunate side effects of the urban activism of the 60s and 70s is the belief that development is wrong and that fighting it makes you an environmentalist. My readers are surprisingly mixed. I have conservative readers, for instance, women with headscarves, but also many liberal, leftist, feminist, nihilist, environmentalist, and secularist readers. Next to those are mystics, agnostics, Kurds, Turks, Elvis, Sunnis, gays, housewives, and businesswomen. If he could go back, choose another career, my father would have liked to have been an environmentalist of some kind, which is why he'd really like to be remembered for something almost nobody knows he did. Naming Earth Day. It agitated him to look up Earth Day on Wikipedia recently and not see his name anywhere. So a few days ago, I added it. I feel more like an environmentalist since I've been up here. There are parts of the Earth that are covered with pollution all the time. I saw weather that was unexpected. Storms bigger than we've seen in the past. This is a human effect. This is not a natural phenomenon. We're all environmentalists. People feel like, well, if I drive an SUV, I guess I can't be someone who works on global warming issues, and you can. You can. If you drive an SUV, you're still an environmentalist. It's no secret, if you know me, have ever met me or have shared a meal with me, that I'm a passionate environmentalist. I'm not an environmentalist. I'm a cultural repairman. It's all about efficient and restorative use of resources to make the world secure, prosperous and life-sustaining. I don't run a car, have never run a car. I could say that this is because I have this extremely tender environmentalist conscience, but the fact is I hate driving. The Earth is a beautiful planet. The space station is a great vantage point to observe it and share our planet in pictures. It makes you more of an environmentalist. No one is an environmentalist by birth. It is only your path, your life, your travels that awaken you. I describe myself as an environmentalist not because I'm marching in the street with placards but because I like to be in the woods by myself. You can't be a perfect environmentalist unless you're Ed Begley, Jr., whom I once saw on TV using a bicycle to power his toaster. He's amazing. I became an environmentalist because I love the living world, but I spend much of my life thinking about electricity, industrial processes, and civil engineering. Visit our website for more quotes, quoting.com.